Today in our 2007 Toyota Tundra, we will be installing the B&W turnover ball underbed gooseneck trailer hitch with custom installation kit. Part number BWG NRK 1257. Now we have a 2 5/16 ball to hook up to our gooseneck trailer. So we have our spring-loaded safety chains we hook up to, and when we're not towing our trailer, they fall down nicely in the grooves of our bed liner here. They won't stick up to damage our cargo. Now, normally on most B&W gooseneck applications, you can take the ball and flip it upside down for storage position. So on our Tundra, because the differential clearance is so low with the ball in the stored position, they actually made the center section here so the ball won't slide down into, so you can't accidentally store it in that position. This plate would drop down here and be secured by our pin that secures the ball. However, since this truck has a drop-in bed liner, it sits too high up for the pin to engage the hole here. Because this truck has a drop-in bed liner, your only real options are having the ball in place at all times, or no ball in place and just have the hole underneath. You run the risk of stuff falling out of your bed though. So if you were to remove the drop-in bed liner, you could use this plug here, and that would prevent stuff from falling out of your truck bed. But in our case, we don't have that option here today, so we're just gonna leave the ball in place. All right, here's what our kit comes with. We have our 2 frame brackets here. We have our rails that our turnover ball gooseneck will mount to. We have a plug here, which will slide inside of our gooseneck adapter when our ball is not in use, just so you can have a flat surface on your truck bed. Now this plug that we have here, it's not actually a plastic plug. It is a fully metal plug, as you can see here with the weld on the side. It's very durable, very thick. It'll last us a very long time. We have our 2 5/16 gooseneck ball right here, which will slide down in here like so. We have our safety chain loop hardware bag right here to attach your safety chains with your trailer onto. Then we have a large bag of installation hardware to attach all of this to our truck. First thing we need to do is drill our hole for our gooseneck ball to stick through. Now, since this truck has a drop-in bed liner here, it makes it a little bit more difficult to figure out where the center line of our bed is. So we'll take a measurement here from the inside edge of the bed to the other edge, and we're looking about 60 1/4 inches. So we'll make a mark at half of that, just right there. And we'll lift up on our bed liner and see where that mark comes in. And as you can see, right here, our mark is about in center of the ribs in our bed here. So that means we're going to be actually centered on our bed as well as centered on our bed liner. We'll measure back the distance that's specified in the instructions. And we'll make another mark here, and we'll drill out our pilot hole. All right, with our pilot hole drilled, we switched out to our 4-inch hole saw. We'll insert our bit into the pilot hole we drilled, and we'll make our hole. All right, now you can see our hole underneath the bed. You can see how it's nice and centered in our truck bed, and right above our center of our rear differential right here. Now we will remove the heat shield. This will not be reinstalled. Now there's a fuel pump driver module located inside of the frame right here. There's 2 12mm nuts that hold it in place. We'll remove these nuts. I'll set these nuts aside. Now on the passenger side of the frame, there's a wiring clip right here. We need to pop this off the frame. Just like so. We can push it down here and set it aside. Now on our fuel vapor canister here, there's a bracket here. We need to remove that. And I'll slide this bracket on down like so and hang it out of the way for the time being. Now this rubber exhaust hanger here, just on the back section of our tailpipe, we need to slide this off. First, we'll spray it down with some lubricant so it comes off easier. Now we'll use a pry bar and we'll slide it off. Now we'll take one of our channel cross members here, making sure that this notch here will face towards the front of the truck and our channel's facing down like so. We'll slide it over the top of our frame, underneath our bed, like so. We'll come on the other side and pull it on through. And then it'll rotate down like that. Now we'll take our flat section here for our rail and we'll install it in the same manner, making sure it's going to go against the flat side of our angle piece. Go up on the other side and we'll pull it in. And we'll slide both of these towards the back. Okay, with those like that, we can now get our front section in. Now we'll slide our other angle piece with the angles facing down and this part facing towards the rear, and this will be our front rail. Go on the other side and pull it on through. Take our final flat rail. We'll get it into position. Okay. Now we'll take 4 of our 1/2 inch by 2 inch long carriage bolts here, and we'll install them through the 4 center holes in our front rail. And we'll make sure our rails are lined up and the bolts go through both of them. Now we'll take our center section here, making sure our pin here will be on the driver's side. We'll have ourselves a lock washer, a flat washer, and a nut. We'll raise this into position and install our hardware on the front rail. So we'll take a flat washer here, a lock washer, and a nut. Just get it started. We'll come back and do the other 3. We don't need to tighten these fully, just get them started so it'll help support the weight. Now we'll do our rear bolts in the same manner. So here's our driver's side frame bracket. You can tell it's a driver's side because it has the 2 holes here for relocating our fuel pump control module. We'll take one of these large bolts here, put a flat washer on it, and then one of the 1/4 inch thick frame spacers on it. And we'll bolt this into position on our driver's side frame rail. Now when we're placing it, we need to make sure the bottom edge goes inside our frame. Just like that. Make sure all of our frame is cleared out of dirt and debris. You can see how this spacer here is going to sit inside our frame like so. We'll stick it inside our frame like that. Install our lock washer and then thread on our nut. And we'll get the top bolt in. This one we'll get our small 1/8 inch thick spacer, like so. Once we have it pushed in the frame, we'll install our lock washer and then install our nut. in order to get the nut on, you have to pull the bolt down a little bit. Center the nut over the bolt. And then tighten it up a little bit. You may need a second pair of hands to hold the nut in place for you while you do this. Okay, now that we have both of our bolts started and our spacers in the frame properly, we'll repeat the same process on the passenger side. Okay, we're going to slide our passenger side bracket in. We're going to sandwich this wire here into our C channel of our frame bracket, and that'll hold it in place. This is the same one we unclipped from the top of the frame earlier. Now we need to grab our tailpipe section here and pull it towards the center of the vehicle in order to get room to get it in. Okay, with our bracket in place, we'll put our hardware in the bottom just like we did on the other side. Now we'll get our top bolt started. Have our assistant put our lock washer on and our nut. Then I'll push up on our bolt, make sure our spacer plate goes in the frame properly. There we go. Then we'll tighten up the nut. With our frame brackets in place, we can now install our carriage bolts that will attach our rails to the frame brackets. Remember, we do our flat washer on the back, then a lock washer, and a nut. Same on the front rail. Okay, now we have all of our hardware in place. With all of our hardware in place, we'll start tightening the 8 bolts that hold our cross rails to our center section. Now we'll torque these to the amount specified in the instructions, doing the 8 that hold the center section in first. These 2 right here are going to be a little bit more difficult because the spring here for our ball release is in the way. You're going to do this one by hand, just get it as tight as you possibly can. Same with this one. Okay, good. All right, with our 8 bolts tightened down and torqued to spec, we'll tighten the outer 2 that holds our rails to our frame bracket here. We can now torque our frame brackets down. We'll put a wrench inside the frame to hold the nut in place, and then we'll come in with a torque wrench on the bolt. Now when you do this, you want to make sure your spacer plate that went inside the frame is fully seated. You don't want to damage it. All right. Okay, we have an assistant holding our wrench in place from the outside. We'll torque our bolt down now. And we'll repeat the same process on the passenger side. Now we'll take our ball release handle here and we'll slide it in through the driver's side, through this hole, and up on top the tab inside. With it in this position, we can go underneath and install our hardware. We'll take the small carriage bolt here, install it on the handle, like so. You may need to pull the pin out and angle it on down into that position to gain some room to get the bolt in. Make sure you watch your fingers. You don't want to accidentally release the pin and get smacked by the handle springing back. We'll take the flange nut here and install it. Now we'll tighten it down. Now we can grab our handle and push our pin back in, just like so. Now we can reattach our fuel pump driver assembly to the frame of the vehicle. Now, B&W was considered enough if you're going to equip your vehicle with air springs or airbag suspension in the back of it. They made it so you could reattach the module right here on the driver's side frame bracket, just so you have room for the airbags and your gooseneck hitch at the same time. So we'll slide it back up into the frame rail. And reinstall the two nuts that we removed earlier. And we'll tighten these for 12 millimeter again. Now our wiring harness bracket on the back of our charcoal canister used to go here, but now with our middle section of our gooseneck in place, it won't clear anymore. B&W provides us with this bracket here to space it out away from our frame. So we'll install that on there, put the original 12 millimeter nut back on. We can tighten that down with the ratcheting wrench. You have to have the bracket slightly loose in order to install the carriage bolt. We'll get the carriage bolt in, like so. Then we'll tighten our bracket down all the way. Then we'll take our wire bracket here, slide it back over like so. Take the nut, screw it on there. Now we'll tighten down the nut all the way. Make sure there's plenty of slack in our wires, which there is, so we're good. I'm going to take this exhaust hanger off for the time being. Some trucks this step may not be necessary, but in our case it is, because our exhaust is really close to our gooseneck right here. This spacer here that's included, which we can install on the hanger, will help lower the exhaust down some, so you don't have to listen to it banging into your hitch. So you slide it on like this, and the bottom slot, rotate it on through, just like so. And then we'll be having our exhaust slide through this hole, and it'll push it on down. We'll slide it onto our bracket like so, and then we'll get it on the other two studs that hang down and push it back on, just like so. Okay, now we can drill the holes for our 4 safety chain holes. You make a pilot hole first. Now we can enlarge our holes that we drilled to a 1/2 inch diameter, and for that I'm going to use a step bit. If you want, you can just use a 1/2 inch drill bit too. Okay, now we need to come in from the top and go down with our drill bit 2, just because the bed liner here didn't get drilled out all the way. Alright, so we'll drop these down, and then we'll go underneath and install our hardware. Now we'll take one of our springs, install it on the U-bolt, with the small end facing towards the end of the U-bolt. Put a nut on it. Do the same for the other one. And we'll do the same for the other U-bolt. Okay, with all the hardware started, we'll tighten the nuts until they're flush with the end of the U-bolt. All right, so use a 3/4 inch socket. We'll tighten these down a little bit. That one's flush now. And flush. With our safety chain loops now installed, we can now install our ball. To do that, we'll grab our handle, pull it out, turn it clockwise until it latches. We'll take our ball, insert it like so, and then we can pull our pin and secure it. Turn it counterclockwise and release. With our handle released, you can see our ball's not going anywhere. And that completes our installation of the B&W turnover ball underbed gooseneck trailer hitch with custom installation kit, part number BWG NRK1257 on our 2007 Toyota Tundra.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com.